Country music icon who never forgot about her Pennsylvania roots stops in Crawford County.
Grammy award-winning singer Jeannie Seely visited her hometown of Townville today for the unveiling of new signs that honor her accomplishments.
At 80 years old, Jeannie Seely, once hailed as Miss Country Soul, no longer walks the red carpets or dominates radio waves. Instead, she wakes before sunrise, brews the same brand of coffee she's sworn by since 1972, and sits alone on her back porch just outside Nashville. There, she watches the sun rise over the misty Tennessee hills with a journal in her lap and a silence so thick it hums. Some mornings, she writes lyrics she'll never release. Other days, she just stares out, lips tight, whispering names only she remembers. While the world spins forward, chasing fresh fame and new stars, Jeannie copes with the weight of having lived through everything and being remembered for almost none of it. Her old records still sell in Europe. Her voice still echoes through the Grand Ole Opry. But in her private world, Jeannie lives quietly in the shadows of memories, tragedy, and one final truth she's never dared speak aloud. Until now. She was born Marilyn Jean Seely in Titusville, Pennsylvania, in 1940, a town so small it had one grocery store, one church, and one radio tower. Her parents were steel workers and farmers, hardened by war and time. But even as a child, Jeannie's voice had a lilt that turned heads. By age 4, she was harmonizing with the wind through the trees. By 16, she was sneaking into late-night bars just to feel the rhythm of live country music. She knew she didn't belong in Titusville. She was too fiery, too emotional, too bold. She dreamed in rhinestones, while the world around her settled for plaid. In the early 60s, she boarded a Greyhound bus to Los Angeles with little more than $50 and a burning conviction that Nashville would eventually call her name. She found herself working secretarial jobs in music publishing offices by day, writing songs on diner napkins by night. Her big break came when she penned "Anyone Who Knows What Love Is Will Understand," which Irma Thomas recorded, and decades later was featured in Black Mirror, reminding the world that Jeannie's songwriting was timeless. But it wasn't until she finally moved to Nashville that she truly transformed. She signed with Monument Records and released "Don't Touch Me" in 1966. It hit like lightning, shooting to number 2 on the charts and earning her a Grammy, the first woman to win for Best Country Vocal Performance. She didn't just break in, she broke rules. Jeannie wore mini skirts on the Opry stage when it was still taboo. She smoked, cursed, wrote from a woman's perspective, and refused to soften her edges for the comfort of conservative audiences. Still, behind that boldness was a deep ache. Her marriage to songwriter Hank Cochran, the man behind hits like "Make the World Go Away," had highs that inspired duets and lows that cracked her voice in interviews. The divorce hit her harder than she let on. She buried the pain in her work, performing endlessly and writing songs soaked in heartbreak. Yet she never stopped climbing. Through the 70s and 80s, she became a fixture at the Grand Ole Opry, not just as a performer, but as a force. But fame is a fickle friend. By the 90s, the industry that once celebrated her began to shift. New voices came, record executives changed, and Jeannie's name fell further down the bill. Awards shows stopped calling. Younger artists didn't always know who she was. She smiled through it. But privately, she grieved, not just for the spotlight, but for the fading of a golden era she had helped build. And yet, in 2025, Jeannie Seely still wakes up with a purpose. Still sings, still writes, still stands behind the Opry curtain before every performance, whispering to herself like a prayer, "Don't forget who you are." The Grand Ole Opry isn't just a stage to Jeannie Seely. It's a living memory, a sacred ground where ghosts whisper from the wings, and every note carries the weight of generations. Jeannie joined the Opry in 1967, and while many stars have come and gone, she's become something rarer, a constant. For over 5 decades, she's stood in that circle of wood, singing songs of love, pain, and survival, not out of habit, but out of reverence. Even now, at 85, she performs there more than almost anyone else, slipping into rhinestone-studded gowns stitched by hand, walking carefully in high heels that carry stories no one else knows. But something changed after the pandemic. The lights still shine bright on the Opry stage, but the energy backstage? It's quieter. She's seen friends pass away, some slowly, others suddenly. Whispered announcements of heart attacks, diagnoses, or just didn't wake up this morning. And every time, Jeannie pauses longer in front of her dressing room mirror, not out of vanity, but out of gratitude. Her voice may have softened, but it still rises when it matters. Her hair may take longer to style, but it still holds shape under the spotlight. She's still here, and she knows she shouldn't be. Behind the scenes, though, Jeannie carries more than her songs. She carries grief. In her private moments, she still talks about her only child, the one she never got to raise. A pregnancy lost in her early 20s that she rarely mentioned publicly. It haunted her, and she poured that pain into lyrics that never made it to the radio. She also lost her second husband, Nashville attorney Gene Ward, in 2016. He was her rock in the later years, the one who drove her to shows, calmed her nerves, and reminded her that she still mattered. When he passed, Jeannie kept performing, but something in her shifted. She started sleeping with the TV on, started writing letters she never sent, started talking to the empty passenger seat in her car. And still, she shows up, makeup on, boots polished, smile wide. But it's not performance, it's resilience. Every time she steps into the circle at the Opry, she's not just singing a song, she's standing against time, telling it, not yet. And the audience, young and old, rises to their feet. Not because she's famous, but because she's still fighting, still showing up, still surviving. There's a strange silence that follows Jeannie Seely home after a night at the Opry. The applause fades, the spotlight cools, the makeup comes off, and what remains is a quiet house filled with echoes, pictures on the wall, trophies collecting dust, and memories stacked like records on shelves. At 85 years old, Jeannie doesn't live in a mansion, but she does live in history. Her home outside Nashville is lined with framed newspaper clippings, fan letters, and shelves of vinyl that include her own albums right beside the legends she once toured with. Patsy Cline, Dottie West, Ernest Tubb. She's not just a part of country music. She is country music. But the music business doesn't always remember that. In recent years, Jeannie has spoken publicly, though gently, about how the industry tends to erase older women. Not with cruelty, but with indifference. Award shows rarely call. Country radio won't play her. TV specials favor newcomers with a few hits over legends with a lifetime of service. She doesn't say it bitterly, but the truth hangs in her voice like a ghost note. She jokes about being the oldest girl at the dance. But even jokes wear thin when you're the only one left from your era still dancing. Behind the stage gowns and signature wit is a woman who often eats dinner alone, reheats coffee in the microwave, and sits at a kitchen table writing lyrics that may never be recorded. She still writes every morning, sometimes on legal pads, sometimes in the margins of old church bulletins. She'll hum a melody, stare at the rain, and whisper a line to herself before scribbling it down. Some mornings, she talks to her dog, a tiny rescue she calls her studio assistant. Other days, the silence is too heavy, so she'll turn on an old Willie Nelson record and let it fill the room. But she's not bitter. She's wise. She's endured. While others faded, Jeannie adapted. She launched a podcast before most of her peers even owned smartphones. She joined TikTok, slowly, carefully, at the urging of a younger fan who volunteers to help her post. And she started mentoring up-and-coming female songwriters, reminding them that their stories matter even if Nashville doesn't always listen. Her advice? Don't shrink yourself for their comfort, and never let them tell you you're too much. She says it with a wink, but it comes from a place of truth carved by decades of being both celebrated and overlooked. In this strange twilight of her life, Jeannie Seely finds peace, not in recognition, but in resilience. Her career isn't about comebacks, it's about staying power. And that might be the rarest achievement in all of music. Jeannie Seely's journey through country music wasn't just shaped by songs and stages, it was shaped by the men who tried and failed to mold her. In the 1960s and 70s, Nashville was a city of cowboy hats and closed doors. Female artists were often expected to smile, sing sweet, and stay silent when the deals were made. But Jeannie, she refused. She pushed back, and for every moment she was celebrated on stage, there was another behind the scenes where she was told to tone it down or act more ladylike. Some of the biggest producers in country music sat across from her in studio offices and told her she was too strong-willed to be marketable. One famous label exec once said to her face, "You sing with too much attitude." Women don't buy records from other women who sound that confident. Jeannie didn't flinch. She leaned in and replied, "Then I'll make music for the men who can handle it." She recorded songs other women were too scared to touch. Songs about divorce, about desire, about loneliness that wasn't gentle. And while those lyrics made her a trailblazer, they also made her a target. Radio DJs often ignored her records. Tour promoters offered her half of what her male counterparts were paid. One tour bus driver once told her she'd never make it more than 2 years in the industry. That was in 1966. She's still here. And the men in her personal life? They tried too. Jeannie's first marriage ended when she realized she was shrinking herself to fit inside someone else's expectations. Her second marriage, though full of love, still came with challenges. She loved Gene Ward, but she also insisted on keeping her independence. Even at the height of their marriage, she made it clear, "I don't want to be saved. I want to be respected." She's spoken in interviews about how lonely it was to stand her ground, how the industry turned cold when she refused to smile and nod, but she never backed down. She'd rather be alone than be controlled. And that choice, repeated year after year, shaped the version of Jeannie Seely we see today. Fierce, funny, and still unbending. Her strength cost her roles on radio, TV slots, and platinum records. But it bought her something greater, a voice that has never been silenced, a presence that outlived trends, and a truth that only comes from living life on your own terms. Jeannie Seely never needed a man to define her legacy. She carved it herself, with grit, grace, and a voice that still cuts through the noise. Every Saturday night, the lights of the Grand Ole Opry still shine, just like they have for nearly a century. And most weekends, if you wait long enough, you'll see her, Jeannie Seely, now 85, stepping onto that stage like she's been doing since 1967. She's not just a guest anymore, she is the Opry, the longest-running female member in its history. But if you ask her, she doesn't walk out there to make history. She walks out there to keep the ghosts company. The Opry is more than a stage to Jeannie. It's a sanctuary and a graveyard. She's performed with nearly every legend who's passed through its doors. Dottie West, Jack Green, George Jones, Loretta Lynn, little Jimmy Dickens. One by one, they've all left. And now, when she steps into the wings, she often stands alone. "Sometimes I feel like I'm singing to their spirits," she once said, "like maybe they're still listening, just from a different seat." She always wears something glittery, something bright, not because she wants to shine, but because she feels a duty to remind the crowd what country music used to feel like: personal, raw, glamorous, in its own broken way. Her microphone has history. Her voice still carries weight, and when she sings a ballad about heartbreak or memory, you can almost feel the air pause around her. But when the show ends, the reality hits harder. The dressing rooms are quieter than they used to be. Fewer people knock on her door. Younger artists, if they do greet her, sometimes don't know the depth of the woman they're shaking hands with. She doesn't take it personally. She just lets the silence settle, packs up her bag, and walks the long hallway back out to the parking lot. That walk is where the truth lives. Sometimes it's late and cold. Sometimes it's raining. But Jeannie insists on walking herself out. No entourage, no assistant. Just a woman, a purse, and a slow stroll into the Tennessee night. And every step she takes down that dim hallway is a reminder that legends don't vanish. They just move more quietly with time. The Opry still calls her name. The spotlight still remembers where to land. But more and more, she knows the curtain will one day close for good. She doesn't fear it. She just wants to make sure that when it does, she's already said everything worth saying. And when her footsteps finally echo for the last time backstage, she hopes someone's listening. Because those ghosts, they're not just memories. They're warnings of what fame forgets, of what the spotlight hides, of how even the greatest voices can be left behind unless someone keeps singing. Part 7. The House, the Silence, and the Secret She's Been Keeping. Nestled just outside of Nashville, down a winding back road few fans have ever seen, sits a modest white home with peeling shutters, a creaky porch swing, and a rusted mailbox that still reads Seely. It's not a mansion. It's not the kind of place you'd expect a living legend to call home. But for Jeannie Seely, this quiet house holds more history than any gold record on her wall. Because this is where she came to grieve, to heal, and, most importantly, to hide. Inside, the air smells faintly of lavender and old records. There's a turntable in the corner, worn from decades of use. The kitchen hasn't changed since the 70s. Yellow linoleum, Formica countertops, coffee mugs with chips on the rim. Her bedroom window faces the woods. She says she likes watching the deer at dawn. But what most don't know is that this house, this silence, was once her only refuge when everything else fell apart. After the passing of her second husband, Gene Ward, Jeannie didn't talk to anyone for weeks. Friends said she'd answer the phone just to hang it up again. She stopped playing music around the house, canceled interviews, disappeared from public life for a while. People thought she was fine, because she still smiled when the cameras were rolling. But the truth was, she was drowning in a sorrow no spotlight could soften. And deep in this home, behind a locked closet door in the back hallway, lies something even closer to her heart. Something almost no one has seen. A box, wrapped in old lace, tied with faded ribbon, containing dozens of handwritten letters, not to her, from her to the people she's lost. Each one written after a funeral, a heartbreak, or a night when she couldn't sleep. Letters to her late husband, to her mother, to Dottie West, to Jack Green, even one addressed to the girl I used to be. She never intended to send them. She just needed to speak where no one could interrupt. And every so often, when the weight of her own history becomes too much to bear, she opens the closet, unties the ribbon, and reads one, out loud, to no one and everyone at once. She's never made a documentary, never written a memoir, because the truth, she says, lives between those letters, in what was never said on the Opry stage, in what she could only whisper to an empty room. There's a reason she's kept them private. Some pains don't need an audience. Some stories aren't ready to be told. But the older she gets, the more she wonders if maybe one day she'll let the world read them. Maybe when she's gone. Maybe before. Because in those pages lies not just the story of Jeannie Seely, but the full weight of what it cost her to become a legend. Tucked between her couch cushions, stacked on the end table beside a flickering lamp, are dozens of photo albums. Some so worn the spines are cracking, others still wrapped in plastic, never opened. Jeannie Seely keeps them close, not for vanity, not to show visitors, but because they remind her who she used to be and who she might be the last to remember. Flip through the pages and you'll find the full spectrum of a life lived in rhinestones and heartbreak. There she is, in the early 60s, smiling beside a beat-up car with a guitar in the trunk. A few pages later, she's standing backstage at the Opry with Loretta Lynn, arms linked, grinning like sisters. Then come the darker ones, photos of Jack Green with a drink in his hand and a storm in his eyes. Candid shots of Dottie West, hours before a show. A Polaroid of Jeannie sitting alone in a dressing room, eyes puffy from tears, mascara smudged. But what stings the most aren't the images. It's the silence surrounding them. The calls that no longer come. The birthdays forgotten. The anniversaries that pass with no flowers, no songs. In the last few years, Jeannie has watched the phone ring less and less. The industry she gave everything to has quietly moved on. New stars rise, award shows honor fresh faces, and the Opry lineup rotates more quickly than ever. She never complains publicly. That's not her style. But privately, in the quiet of her kitchen or while brushing her hair before bed, the fear creeps in. What if I'm already gone and nobody noticed? What if the world is forgetting her in real time? Not with a scandal, not with a bang, but with soft indifference. Like a song that fades before the last verse. It's not about ego. Jeannie Seely has no hunger for headlines. It's about connection. About the aching realization that the people who truly knew her, who shared the road, the stage, the long talks between gigs, are mostly gone now, and those who remain are busy chasing their own spotlight, their own battles. There's a photo on her fridge, her and Willie Nelson, arm in arm, laughing like kids. It's faded now, the corners are curling. She sees it every day and wonders when the world will ask her to tell the story behind it. Not in a podcast, not in a tribute show, but while she's still here, to speak it. Because the real fear isn't being forgotten after death. It's being invisible while you're still alive. At 85 years old, Jeannie Seely doesn't perform as often as she used to. Her knees ache in the cold. Her voice, though still laced with honey and heartbreak, tires easier after a long set. But every now and then, when the stars align, the weather is kind, and the pain isn't too sharp, she takes the stage at the Grand Ole Opry. Not for the cameras, not for the money, for the promise she made to herself long ago. As long as I can still sing, I'll keep showing up. She doesn't do wardrobe changes anymore. No more glitter lashes or big hair. These days, she walks out in a plain black jacket, sometimes a scarf wrapped around her throat to keep the chill off. The spotlight hits her silver curls, and for a brief second, you can almost see the glow she carried in 1966. The crowd rises before she opens her mouth. Some stand because they know the history, others because their parents told them to. But every person in that room feels the weight of the moment. This isn't just another set. This is living history. She usually opens with "Don't touch me." Still the same lyrics. Still the same trembling strength behind them. But now, the meaning hits different. It's no longer the cry of a young woman resisting a love she can't have. It's the echo of a woman who's outlived nearly everyone who ever held her. After the applause fades, she thanks the crowd like she always does. But lately, her voice gets a little softer. The thank yous carry more weight, like she knows, deep down, that each one might be the last. When she steps off the stage, there's no limo waiting. No flashy entourage, just a friend or two from the Opry staff. A ride home, maybe a cup of tea if she's not too tired. She'll get home, slip off her boots, and sit in the same chair she always does, facing the same old TV she barely watches. And in that silence, she sometimes wonders if it all meant anything. But here's the truth. It did. Jeannie Seely isn't a footnote in country music. She is country music. She lived it, bled for it, survived it. She paved roads others now stroll down without ever knowing who laid the gravel. And yet, she's still here. Not just surviving, still giving, still showing up, still singing through the pain. She may never get the movie, the museum wing, the major network tribute she deserves, but the people who know, the real fans, the old musicians, the heartbroken poets of Nashville, they know. And in the quiet corners of the Opry, when the lights dim and the stars go home, her voice still lingers. Because Jeannie Seely doesn't need a final bow. She's already become the song that never truly ends.